All right, good evening. Today I'll be talking about academic language and specifically academic language in math. All right, so academic language is formal oral and written language used in the classroom and the workplace. So what academic language is, it's explicit terms for expressing and understanding a content. Um, Academic language is something that's very descriptive. So if you say something in academic language as opposed to conversational language, it will be clearly defined, and anyone reading it or listening to it will know exactly what you're talking about, as opposed to conversational language, where I could use terms instead of like over there. You would never use that in academic language because you'd want it to be specific. So anyone that was either writing your paper or listening to what you recorded would know exactly what you were talking about. There are three different aspects of academic language in math, which is the discourse, syntax, and vocabulary. Another one is also language function, and language function is how you would use the language. So what the purpose of teaching this language to your students are. So if I wanted students to analyze text, what they would do is they would read through it, and while they were reading through it, they would be closely reading to compare it to something else, to analyze, do a deeper interpretation of it. Vocabulary is the type of words that you use when you're talking. Syntax is how the structure of your sentences, how you set them up. And discourse is the specific purpose of your language. So if I was using academic language for a speech, that would be the specific discourse was that I was using. Another example of discourse is in a lower stress environment where you could still use academic language would be something like a pair share. Those are easy to implement in a classroom. There's a big need for academic language, which we don't see as much in school. It's not as implemented as much as it should be. Academic language is often underdeveloped in schools because of what we call a trivial pursuit view of learning, which really isn't reflective of the real world. So, what a trivial pursuit method of learning is how, say, for example, you give students a test. There's 3 pages on the test, 40 questions. They read through the question without any verbalizing or speaking or anything. They just bubble in a letter on their Scantron. That shows that doesn't have students use any academic language, any conversation skills. That just has them bubble in, see if they can jog something in their memory that makes them remind it, and then, oh, maybe I'll do B or C. There's a 50-50 chance there if you can eliminate two of the other options by process of elimination. But that's not reflective of the real world. As we know, in the real world, say you're working on a construction project, you need to be able to collaborate with others, bounce ideas off each other, and academic language is a way that you could do that by, if I say something to one person, they can say exactly the same thing to someone else, whoever's under them, and we all know exactly what we're talking about. Academic language is a big struggle for English learners because little class time is spent on developing this. And it really puts English learners behind because very often we have students write essays. One big example would be a college essay. If you want to get into college, you have to be strong at writing essays. If you don't know proper academic language, that really puts you behind the 8 ball when you're going to submit your college essay. Job interviews are another place where we see academic language a lot. So, um, yeah, job interviews are going to be somewhere where you want to use a more um, formal tone of what do we call it? Formal language. Somewhere you want to use more formal language. And if English learners don't have this, they're going to be looked down upon in the interview process compared to other candidates who do have this. Academic language and math. So very often math is seen as a silent subject. Students will be taught how to do something on the board, and then they just go on their paper and duplicate that 20 times in different sets of problems without ever much conversation happening. We need students to engage in more conversation in the math classroom because this is what helps build conceptual understanding for the biggest part. If a student can explain something to another student, or if they can speak out loud and actually hear someone talking about what's happening in academic language, they're going to have a much better understanding instead of just saying, oh, I plug and chug because that's what my teacher told me. Examples of academic language in math would be like, in some vocabulary terms, could be like slope. If I was talking about how steep a hill was, or how hard it was going to be to climb, I could say that hill has a greater slope than the other one, as opposed to just saying it's bigger or it's higher or whatever. Slope is a term that anyone who's involved with math would directly be able to relate to that. And other examples of academic language and math for vocabulary could be fraction, greater than, or like growth in populations. So it's very applicable to the real world. All right, thank you for your time.